When vapor from the nostril of death came down so beautifully over my daughter's soccer game. First off, that title. Whoa. A lot of very contradicting tones from that, like, first. Do you separate the lines in that title purposely? When it ends on so beautifully and then it goes over to over my daughter's soccer game? I feel like that's like the dividing part.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And also the contrasting between, these images of death and vapor over my daughter's soccer game, right?
Right.
But this is actually another. I find that with all my writing, the ones that I like the best are the ones that really came out of a genuine experience. Mm-hmm. And this one came out of a very genuine experience. I was at my daughter's soccer game, and we had some time beforehand, before the game started. We dropped her off. My wife and I were riding our bikes. We had brought our bikes on the back of our car because we were going to have some time before the game started. Mm. And this is a little neighborhood in Sacramento, somewhere. I won't say exactly where, but it doesn't really matter. And I've always enjoyed looking at the way people live. I've always found it fascinating, seeing especially older neighborhoods that, these cookie cutter neighborhoods that are built, and they repeating patterns, mm-hmm. And they planted some trees and they're tiny. Mm-hmm. Those are not interesting to look at because they're all the same. Right. But after a period of time goes by, people, different owners inhabit them, change them, paint them, change the landscaping. And in some of these older neighborhoods, like this one was built in around the 1950s. Some of them can really go, to just falling apart, be so dilapidated. Definitely. And there were some homes that had holes in the roof. There were some that had no screens on the windows, mm-hmm. and there was like tarps, hung up over the windows. And it's interesting to me to imagine what those lives are like inside all those homes. And right. These are people raising families. These are people that bought these homes. It was the biggest purchase of their life, and some of them are going to grow old and die in them, and never move out of that. And what I want to get across in this poem is I want to have this real tension between the decay and the life. That right. Those two things are part of this existence that we are in, right? And when you can see those on display, the things that are growing, these rose bushes and mm-hmm. these trees, they're gigantic. Some of these orange and lemon trees in right. this neighborhood. And they're just taking over. All this vegetation is taking over some of them. And so, some people mow their lawn every week and keep the weeds out of here and there. Mm. But eventually nature is going to pull all this back one day. Yeah. And so, this was based on an experience. But this one, I've spent a lot of time on this one. It's had a lot of different drafts. And I don't know if it succeeds or not in the end. I have to be honest.
That theme that you're getting out of just like the life within that state of what looks like decay, that's exactly where I came to when I read this. As someone that lives in a suburban neighborhood, we're not allowed. We have the strict regulations on there's no fruit trees that we're allowed to grow. Well, we can't have. We can't change things. We can't diversify the house and make it our own. Really, it has to look the same. All the houses look the same. And so when I read this, I was like, wow, that's really exactly what I want in a house. But that's the sort of living environment that people should have.
I do have to get back to the title briefly because the vapor from the nostril of death. That term I did not come up with. That actually is a line from Walt Whitman's Song of Myself. And it was in his 1855 first edition. And it was he was later removed. And a few years ago, I had always had the deathbed edition. It was the one that he approved before he died. He went back and edited his poems like continually over the years. He wasn't as prolific in his old age, so I think he spent a lot of time editing. And a lot of times he took out and edited things, took out things that made the poem, in my opinion, less, whatever the word you want to insert there is, beautiful, effective, whatever it is. And this was a term that he had removed. And when I read I was reading Song of Myself from this 1855 edition, and I had taken a Walt Whitman class in undergraduate, and I had always had the deathbed edition, and I've read it numerous times. When I saw this term, I quickly grabbed my deathbed edition, Walt Whitman, and I was like, I don't remember that. And then I found out that he had removed it. So this really is a kind of nod to Walt Whitman, this poem. The structure of it, where the indentation during the dream sequence, whatever we can call it, that
the hanging indents. That's okay.
Yeah. That is a nod to Walt Whitman.
Okay, I see.
And anyone who knows Walt Whitman would see that.
Okay.
I don't know if I doubt very few people would recognize vapor from the nostrils of death, but I just wanted to bring that phrase back to life because he had removed it. That title came later, so
that's super interesting. You've intrigued me. I'll have to read that. Read some of those poems, Walt Whitman. Getting into some of the phrasing and the poem itself, I found the jump to death at the end was very unexpected. What was your thought process as you went into this, to the ending of the poem?
Well, again, there's these contrasting things going on, right? The soccer. My daughter's soccer game was getting out of control. And it's very rare that happens, but this game in particular, the other team was losing, and they were getting violent. They were getting vicious, and the parents on the sideline were equally getting. It was just getting ugly, and it was a cloudy, rainy day, and I'm just thinking, like, why are these people doing this? Like, why is this such a big deal, right? Why are these parents screaming at the referee? And I just stopped paying attention to the game. It didn't really matter anymore. And I was thinking about the neighborhood that we just passed through and thinking about it, you know. I kind of wanted to get back on my bike and ride over there and ride through it rather than sit there and watch the rest of the game, you know. And that's out of my control. You know, all the stuff that those parents were doing and yelling and all that, and the girls about to fight on the field, that's all out of my control. So what can I control? I can only control my perception and the way I react to it. And so that dichotomy of the inner peace that I was really in at that moment, because I was detached from what was happening.
Right.
The inner peace that I really felt by being detached from all that anger, feeling that's just how I am by nature, right? I don't get worked up over the soccer game. It's not that big a deal to me, but I enjoy watching it. So that feeling of detachment of watching this happen, and then the sky opened up, and it was just one of the most impressive visual cloud displays that I'd seen. And I've lived in Texas before and seen some crazy, thunder clouds and storm clouds. This was like a circle of blue that just opened up, and it was like right above us. And I'm also thinking in my head, like, wow, look how beautiful that is. Like, no one's paying attention to it at all.
Yeah.
And so I think the reason, you go back to your question about death, right? Death is not something to be afraid of. It's going to happen to all of us. And what I really feel is the more we can accept that fact that we are going to die, the more meaningful and significant life is. And you'd think it would be the opposite, right? You'd think that the more that you love life, the less you want to die.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily want to die, or you're afraid to die, right? Because you want to live.
Yeah.
But I feel like true peace happens when you accept the world as it really is, instead of hoping and wishing it to be different than what it is.
Yeah.
So death for me, it has always been a recurring theme. I've been interested in it from back when I was in high school. Again, I was looking for answers to how I got here. How did I get into this universe? How did I get into this body?
Yeah.
And what is this about? And death is something that you eventually begin to think about when you think about that.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I wish more people would think about their own mortality. You know, I've heard of cancer patients that know that they're going to die. And the ones that do the worst, the ones that have the hardest time, they're the ones that don't accept it.
Mm-hmm.
But if they accept what's really going to happen and they don't fight it, it can be an opportunity to be present to the people that you care about and love as you go through that process. But we don't have to wait till we have cancer. We can do it now, and we should do it now.
Yeah. I struggled for a long time about like the concept of death. I feel like when I was really, really young, like it would keep me up at night thinking about it. And sometimes it still does. I don't know if I've ever really conquered it in the way that you described, the way that I probably should. But it's something that makes me think about a lot. And so this poem like really connected with me in that way. But I wanted to talk about the sort of tone that you create through that theme and through the sort of out-of-body experience in the poem. Because of the craziness of the soccer field and that out-of-body experience that you have, would you say that the tone is more of a dramatic and cinematic opening with the blueness of the sky, or is it something gentler and more personal?
Well, I think earlier I said I don't know if I pull, in the end, I don't know if this poem succeeds in what I was trying to do. It's supposed to be an acceptance of things. It's not supposed to be necessarily an optimistic poem, and it's not supposed to be a pessimistic poem. It's also designed to make you think about death. There's the section about the Halloween life-sized figure standing behind the glass, right? What is that about? And I saved that for the end of the dream sequence on purpose.
Right. And you turn away from it.
Yes. The lady turns away, and as well as the first person perspective of this poem. Because looking at that which is deepest in us is difficult. The line between life and death is maybe not a line at all. And that deep, deep part of ourselves that's inside of us that we sense is not far away. But it is difficult to see it. And I'm hinting at that.
Right.
The great mysteries of life, the biggest ones, they don't come across well in words. And that's always the challenge that I find when I'm putting something down on paper, is that into writing is that, will this come across? And that's always what I'm working at. And I don't know if it does necessarily. I hope in the end that this poem is at least enjoyable to read and maybe leaves you thinking and wondering a little bit more. It might require a few readings before some of the deeper meanings maybe can come out or sink in.
It took me a few readings to understand kind of some of the symbols that you were using in the dream sequence. But that is why I want to have this conversation, so that readers that aren't as experienced in poetry or who are intimidated by it but interested will be able to understand those meanings that you're trying to get across, and they'll be able to look deeper into the poems the next time they read it, or the next poem that they read.
Yeah, and one of the things that, at least in this one, is, and you'll find this in a lot of my writing, is that I'm blending the mundane, which is the everyday, with the extraordinary.
Right.
And hopefully to start to see more of the extraordinary in what you would think would be a mundane exercise, whether you're grocery shopping or, driving down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything else you wanted to add to this poem?
No, I think that's pretty good.
Thank you.